Okay, well, thank you very much. You provided us with that wonderful draft document. I personally haven't had time to read it in depth. I did, scan through it though, and just kind of, I hit a part and I get mad and then I just have to put it away. So anyways, I think we would just like to open up the floor for you two to talk, and to our everyone here to have questions afterwards or during. And I'd like to just turn it over to you two and ask if you see hands raised. Just go ahead and call on them as you see fit. If that's okay.
Sure. Do you want me to like share my screen and kind of go through some of the highlights of it and kind of go through the report? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We don't really have a plan, so this will be casual.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. So thank you, Brenda and Patrick. We really appreciate you being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
So I'll kind of start talking and Patrick jump in where you want. But so this police budget roadmap really is only possible thanks to Matthew Mitnick, who used to be on the steering committee for Progressive Dane. 2 years ago, I don't remember who was all on the committee at that time, but it was me and Patrick and Matthew. Was that it? Just the three of us, right?
There may have been another, but we were the three, especially Matthew and you, who did most of the work.
Yeah. At that time, we got a little bit more support from the city. So we had, somebody from the finance department and the people from the police department's finance department were actually coming to the meetings with us. They were sharing information. They were providing us background. They even did PowerPoint slides for us and things like that. And so we did get quite a bit of support from Laura from the finance department and Teague from the police department, finance department. And we were able to put together this report. We spent a lot of time writing all the language around it, but we had lots of reports and information, and we were able to put this report together. It was still a lot of work, but it wasn't as bad as it was this year. Last year, we tried to do the same thing again, and we didn't get that level of support, and it never happened last year. And so this year, Patrick and I actually made it happen, mostly because Patrick would just try to get the information out of everybody. But nobody came to our meetings, no staff folks came to our meetings to help us produce the report. So you'll see throughout this report, it's still a draft. It can't really be done until we see what the mayor's operating budget is, and that doesn't come out until the first Tuesday in October. So this is a draft, and we really are looking for feedback about what else should be in here. And we're hoping that this roadmap can just be updated every year is sort of our plan. So I don't know. What do you think, Patrick? Any other introductory remarks about that? This year, there's a whole bunch more people on the committee, but still, really, Patrick and I did the work. Oh, I remember. Yes. Juliana was on the committee with us, wasn't she?
In a sense.
I don't remember. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Brenda, that the way we have approached this has been to try to have a kind of a fact-based report, and that there isn't a lot of interpretation of the budget from a particular lens. That maybe a little bit slips in here and there, but we really wanted to prevent facts. This is what the budget is. And when we had all that help the first year that we did it, it really, really made it exactly that document, I think. And, we can discuss why we don't get as much support recently. And I think part of it is just because personnel changes in MPD and in the city's finance department. There are new people involved, and those people that helped us so much have either moved on or been moved to a different position in MPD. So it was particularly difficult to get some of the information, and we'll point that out. But it's also the nature of PSRC that we don't get a ton of support. We're kind of in an awkward position, but maybe that will come up as we look at the report.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that, you know, when you look at the plan commission and how many staff people show up to a plan commission, and then you look at our committee and we get like sort of one staff person, for the longest time, they couldn't even find a second staff person to help her with the meeting. So during when we all switched to Zoom, I was basically doing the staff roles and helping Emily, the one person that was assigned to us to do the meetings and stuff like that. So yeah, we're definitely understaffed as a committee. There's lots of reasons for that. Some of it's political, some of it's just probably oversight. Honestly, I don't think some of it might not be intentional, but they've never had staffing for this, so why would they staff it better, right? So this, if you click on any of these things, you'll jump right to where you want to go. Just so you know that's the way we got it set up. So it is kind of almost written more like a blog, or like a I don't know. It's easy to just jump around everywhere is what we tried to do. So we did put out, you know, I'll just real briefly say a few things, and Patrick, jump in wherever you want. But this is the mission of the PSRC, and I think people don't really realize what it is, but we are supposed to review priorities and capital budget priorities of the police and fire departments. We have focused primarily on the police department, and that is something that draws quite a bit of criticism that we haven't done this for the fire department too. But we can barely get the police department one done. How are we ever going to get the fire department one done? And then we're supposed to be the liaison between the community and the city on public safety issues, and that particular issue seems to have been kind of transferred over to the community oversight board. To some extent, you know what I mean? Like we have some mission issues between the different organizations within the city. And then annually, we're supposed to make recommendations to the mayor and common council on the annual work plans and the long range goals of the department. Well, it turns out they don't have annual work plans and they don't have long range goals. So we're this is where, again, our committee is sort of has our hands tied. Because when I said, where are the long range plans? Where are the annual work plans? When I, got on the committee, they're like, well, we don't do those things. Well, then like, what does this mean then? So it's sort of interesting. This is just a little bit about the subcommittee. Agendas and minutes and video. Unfortunately, some of them are missing and I don't really know why. And I'm going to try to get to the bottom of that. But because we're a subcommittee and we're not in Legistar, we're in the clerk's area, and everything just didn't get updated, basically. So this is why all committees should be in Legistar. That's really, I mean, like I can't find this information to provide it to you, and I don't know why I couldn't find the videos from these. I know that we record every single time we meet, but when I was Googling and searching and trying to figure it out, I couldn't find them. So anyways, those are the meetings, the minutes, the video. And then we did have a public hearing on Saturday, September 14th. Wednesday, September 14th. Only 6 people showed up, I think. And really only 2 that would have probably been more on our side and 4 that would have been more police supporters. So we did not have a great turnout. There was a press release, I believe it went out. I saw it, but it did not draw any attention at all for some reason. So that was interesting. Again, I think it's, when the police department wants to get the word out about something, they're really effective at getting the word out about something. I don't believe this is something they wanted to get the word out about. We had to go through the council office to get the word out about it, and it didn't. People. It's a little bit early. I don't think people are used to thinking about the budget this early. But also I'm not sure. There was some complaints from some of the folks that they didn't know about it, or that they heard about it at the last minute, or that type of thing. So this has just got all the budget dates. This is just in writing, and then there is right after this, we also have the budget dates in more of a calendar format. And for these, we did capital budget is in orange and operating budget is in green. So it's got all the dates for the operating and the capital budget. So that may be useful for people in other terms as well. So you might want to just take a look at that if you're interested. One of the big things that we had a problem with this is if we're supposed to give input on the budget, there's no time. Like there's literally no time for us to do that because of the way like the amendments go in. So like if the amendments are due on Wednesday, come out on Friday, and the finance committee is meeting on Monday, there's no time between Friday and Monday for the Public Safety Review Committee to meet and make recommendations to the finance committee. Or if they're meeting the following Tuesday, there's no time to meet and give recommendations to the council. So that's another thing where, you know, we can comment on the mayor's budget, but we can't really be involved much in the actual process once it gets started, once it goes past the mayor's budget. So
And
that's
Brenda,
a little bit of a challenge to us.
I'll add that also is extremely limiting for the entire community. There really is very little opportunity to react to what's happening as excuse me, especially with regard to amendments.
Yeah, and you know, every year when the budget's information comes out, I kind of look at it and I want to make recommendations. But even as an alder, I couldn't figure out how to make it more flexible or how to make it. It's kind of a conundrum about how to make it work better for the public.
Yeah, you know, even
the alders, you know.
Yeah, there is a great finance department webpage now that lays out the dates for the mayor's executive budget for prior to that when departments submit but you know, amendments and things aren't even linked there. That's only in Legistar or for those few in the know. So it's still pretty difficult to even understand timing, more or less, what the content actually is.
Right, and you know, if you find out on Friday that some alder has made some amendment to give the police department 30 new police officers, like as an activist or an organizer, how do you even get the word out between Friday and Monday for people to show up? Like, it's just, you know, that's how much time like they come out at noon on Friday and Monday at 4:30 is the meeting, right? And you got to like kick yourself into high gear over the weekend and try to get people to show up. And it's difficult to get people's attention in our electronic world. So that's what this talks a little bit about, the brief window of time to get public input. And then what do we got next?
Just an aside, the finance committee's amendments to the mayor's capital budget were due this past Friday, and they will be considered, when is it? I got to get my calendar right. It's on Wednesday is the finance committee meeting. So a whole 5 days, but there are no capital budgets related to the police budget. That action, I think, will happen on the operating budget side. So
the police department did request over $50 million over the next 5 or 6 years. So technology and equipment, that's something that's in their budget every year. And their data server upgrade is sort of, you know, uninteresting. But then their third priority, which the mayor did not put in her budget, was $22.9 million for the property and evidence facility and 15.7 for the North Police District Station. And there is some sort of they've been talking about a North Police District Station for a very long time, even though that was kind of the newest one at one point, you know what I mean? But they have gone back and forth about having a joint police fire station building or just a standalone police department district station. It is kind of small compared to the other ones, that is true, but I don't think that I'm not sure if they really need it or not. I'm a bit confused by that.
I took a tour of all their property and evidence facilities recently. They love alders to, you know, come talk to them about things they might need. And yeah, it was fascinating. And I kind of feel sorry for them that they have their property and evidence facilities spread out across the city. We're paying a lot of rent for some of them, but you know, $22.9 million is a lot of money. You know, someday I think it's probably a good idea and to figure out how to move forward on that, but we have a lot of other needs too. So we'll see.
This is the most curious line in here that I'm fully aware, I do not understand, but they're going forward with the body camera pilot, but it's not going to cost them any money.
Yeah, the cameras are supposed to be given to them essentially on loan from the manufacturer, I think.
So here I just put the, you know, what the police department requested and what the mayor put in the budget. So, you know, they requested 2 million, she put in whatever the math is, 500,000. They requested 3 million, she put in 250. They requested 21 million, she put in less than 300,000. You know, they requested 13 million, she put in, you know, less than 300,000. And then here, oh, no. Yeah, they still have this body worn cameras at 0. I'm just like, we got to watch that. What I would say. The other thing is they put in like, oh, and here's all the other things that we need. So on the capital side, which is when you purchase things, they think they need a rescue vehicle, an equipment van, a transport van, another transport van, and a new mobile command post. So those are some things that they said they need, but did not end up actually being a formal budget request. My guess is those are things that we'll see where they are like, oh, look, we got a grant to do this, or, oh, look, we were able to purchase this through, you know, they have some programs where they can purchase things through. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of those things show up in the next couple of years, but actually don't formally go through the budget. They might go through some sort of process outside of the budget.
Michelle is asking in the chat about what is stored at those facilities. And oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, they have to keep many things for years. And a lot of it is cataloged personal property of people in the jail. And they have to, you know, be very careful. It's evidence, every single kind of evidence you can imagine, and they have to keep it for many years, all very organized and cataloged. There are crashed cars that they have to keep for a long time, and just a tremendous amount of stuff.
Thanks for keeping an eye on the chat. I'm not sure. It disappears on me every once in a while. I don't see it. So then the operating budget recommendation, they're requesting 88 million. And this is annoying. I thought they were going to fix this, but they have police services and police support. Those are the two areas of the budget. 77 million for police services and 9 million or almost 10 million for police support. They had told us 2 years ago that they were going to fix that and that they were going to, you know, break it down more to have more areas so you could see where the police were spending their money, like big picture in a better kind of way. But still, it's just $77 million for police services. So hopefully they will be fixing that soon. And let me see what else we got here. Oh, so this is the police department's request. I did point this out. They have all the departments are requested to talk about racial equity and social justice. And of course, as one might predict, the police department's answers to these questions, like, how does this, you know, address inequities? And it's like, they really don't address the questions at all. I mean, I just had to put it in there to point it out. I'm sure there's many other departments that do this too, but it just seemed really typical, I think, of the police department.
Actually, Brenda, I do think that most departments do answer those questions.
Better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their funding, maybe they feel like their funding is shakier, and so they need to try harder. Yeah.
Yeah. of course, they always ask what, for reductions. Every mayor always asks for reductions, this year it was 1%. And of course, the only place they could possibly think about taking it from is patrol operations and traffic services, which are, what everybody, that's the popular thing. So the police department for 25 years typically just cut something popular so that they can ensure that they can keep all their funding. They've always been more political than the other departments. And again, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for Patrick. Patrick would be more cautious, but this is my opinion. And then they asked about a supplemental request. They were only allowed for the town of Madison or one additional request. So they had these supplemental requests. And you see that they have this COPS grant request again. The COPS grant is the grant where they get new officers by getting a grant. And the first year it pays I think it pays 100% the first year. And then the next year it pays a little bit less. And the next year it pays a little less. And then the next year we have to pay for the full amount of the police officer. But that's how the police department has many times over the years gotten more police officers into the department. But it does seem like the number of patrol officers never increases very much, but there's always all these specialty officers all over the place. And so there's it doesn't seem like they actually add to patrol most of the time.
Just FYI, is my guess is that there will be a move in the operating budget to chop out that COPS grant by some alders. I'm not sure yet. It's going to depend. It depends on a lot of things.
Oops, we didn't update this, Patrick. I'll have to fix that. So then this just talks about, after the mayor's budget comes out, then there's the finance and then the alders make the recommendation. So that just talks a little bit about more of the budget. This puts it in context with the rest of the city. And so there's some pretty good graphs in here and some charts that show you quite a bit of information. But you can see that the police department has been between 23 and 24% of the total operating budget for quite some time. And that public safety, including then public health and the fire department, is usually around 41 to 43% of the total budget. And this just has all the numbers in there so that we could keep track of it over time, because it's one of the things that the police department does to us all the time is they don't give us over time type of numbers. They just give us oh, look, this is a 60% increase over last year. But they don't mention that the year before it was a 30% decrease. Or, they don't really put it in context for us. So we tried to keep it in context there. And then this is the graph that really shows public safety and health is the largest part of the budget. 156 million out of 388 million for public safety. And then there is another graph that shows of that police department is 84 million, fire department 63 million, and public health is the 7.5 million.
We should note that lots of public health's budget does come from the county, but still it's interesting.
Yeah. And then here's each of the departments. If you look at just the department, and again, the police is the highest one. This graph in the past has been the other way. So you got I'm turning my head to look at it that way, but it shows all of the departments. And so, you can see, the assessor's office, the attorney's office, clerk's office, lots of departments are very small. And then there's just this huge number here for the police department.
I mean, what community development is, which is a pretty important program for a lot of folks, is, comparatively pretty small.
Right here. That's so it's right here. And this is after they keep putting money in community development to, there was a grant for $1 million to do safety on State Street. And they put that, it really was it was a police department grant that they got, and they put it into the community development budget. So it looked like it was community development money, but it really was just more of the State Street kind of money that they do. So they're going to do crime prevention by having ambassadors or something, you know what I mean? but they put the police department seems like they're trying to hide money over in community development, so that annoys me, but a lot of people voted for it, so it passed. This is, you know, the city attorneys pontificating about why the common council can't affect a lot of things in the police department budget. So this is a memo that they did in 2020 that talks about, you know, the state laws and who has what authority to do what in this area. But you know, the council authorizes the positions and associated funding in the budget. So the number, the title, the compensation range, type of things for the positions, which is the bulk of their budget. But really what the police department does with it afterwards seems like they have a lot of flexibility to do what they want. Let me see if there's anything else in there. I don't think so. Oh, so this is just more on the capital budget. I went back as far as I could finding the budgets. They changed the way they are online, so it's a little bit harder, but this is the amount of money that they got in each of these years. The big thing that they got a lot of money for was the Midtown District Station. And so for a few years, they got quite a bit of money, and then it went back down to like $700,000 a year. So them asking for 50 million was the most they've ever asked for, I believe, in the capital budget. We did do in 2020, we don't have a new listing of this, but we did do an inventory of items. The 1033 program is like the program where they get things from the military. And so that's where they got like their MRAP vehicle and stuff. So we did get a list of all the things that they got through those. Those they don't have to go through the council, they just acquire things when they can get them.
They're free.
They're free, yes. And so some of the things like the militarization of our police department happens there. And they don't have to come and get council approval for those things. So that's a little frustrating.
We did pass an ordinance to require them to come back to council if they do buy something really expensive through the 1033 program, but that almost never will happen, and it hasn't happened yet.
Do they have to report it?
Nope.
That's why we tried to get the list and put it in this report. Yeah, and in the past, we had more people in the police department willing to help us get the information. Here it shows what I was talking about, how almost everything is personnel. So that's the big blue part of their budget. It's personnel. Supplies is just that little orange, and then the gray is the purchase services. So really most of the police department budget is personnel. There's a breakdown of where the personnel money goes, and the non-personnel breakdown of costs. Again, you probably just want to look at the report on your own. This is from 2020, where we actually did find out like how many detective positions, how many police officer positions were there, how many civilian positions. One of the things that continues to confound me is that there's 226 patrol officers, but then there's all these other patrol officers or other officers that are not on patrol. So when they talk about, oh, well, there's only 5 officers on duty in the whole city, or, you know, whatever number it is that they have, you know, in the West District, there's only 6 officers on duty right now. Well, that's true, but there's also all these other officers, and I can't really tell for sure. This still has the school resource officers in it, so that's got to be changed. But we have 482 commissioned positions, and only 226 of them are on patrol. So can you imagine having some sort of like management structure where you had more people not doing your primary work than you do people doing the primary work? It's just seems very backwards and upside down to me. This talks about the number of new positions over the years. And again, Matthew did a great job of getting information for the previous years, and we did not do a great job of getting information, so it ends at 2020. We will try to fix that and get the rest of the information in there. This talks a little bit about the types of police staffing reports. When I was first on the council in around 2003, they used to talk about you need X number of police officers per million. And then in 2009, they changed it to like, oh no, we're going to do the special study and we're going to change the way we talk about the number of officers we need. And more recently, I've heard them talk again about changing it again about how to calculate how many number of officers they need. It seems like they keep doing that to try to get more officers, like by trying to find a new way to calculate how to do it. So if you're interested in the police staffing, I really do think this is an area that the Public Safety Review Committee should really dig into, but I don't think we're going to get the support to do it. So yeah, that was the Edico Solutions report where they talked about proactive and reactive time. And now the chief is talking about a new way to look at crime. And I can't remember it now off the top of my head. Do you remember, Patrick, what he's talking about?
Well, one of the things he wants to do is put a focus on, I think, victims.
Oh yeah.
And so this perhaps could be useful. I don't think it should be the only way we do it, but and impacts on the community also, not just the victims. So sure, why not? But I don't hope we don't only look at that.
Yeah. Here they say 18% of MPD's positions are supervisory. So again, it just confounds me. Like, how is? I don't know. They also say that they supervise too many people. They're supposed to have a recommendation of 1 supervisor to 5 people, and they're at a ratio of 1 to 7. And again, more memos. Here's the organizational chart. They used to have a really great one where they would say like X number of officers were in each of these boxes, but now they just say this is our organizational chart, and it doesn't say like how many are in the central district or how many of them are supervisors, how many of them are in patrol. So this doesn't have as much information as what they used to. And then we have all of the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where would the CARES program fall in that organizational chart?
It doesn't, because it's part of the fire department. And,
oh, it's a fire department. Okay.
And is kind of run through the fire department and public health.
Yeah. Let me see what else we got. Oh, these are all the incidents. And again, we put them by year. Thank you, Patrick, for making this chart. It's a bit of a pain to try to make and do every year, but this is the latest information that we had available to us. So this just shows all the different types of crimes they responded to or reports that they responded to. Interesting thing here is that if you look, these are the totals per year, and look at how in 2020, look at how it's dropping. I mean, that's COVID, right? So that's part of the reason, but I think the numbers are still down. Even now they're still down. And then our next, this is what's reported to the federal government. And so these are the Group A and Group B offenses.
These are their categories, not ours.
Yeah. And again, those numbers are down. And then what else we got next? Oh, so in 2020, the cost of a new full-time officer, Teague told us, was 127. I have seen other numbers, and I don't know why the number is different quite often. But this was what Teague from the police department said the full cost of one police officer is. I think sometimes the used numbers are like an $80,000 or $90,000 range. But this is where those numbers come from, so it really breaks it down. They have a lot of really interesting things where they got all this premium pay and all this overtime pay, and they, so it's not just the cost of an officer, but it's all these, you know, additional things, you know, the education incentives, all their benefits, the supplies. So there's quite a bit that goes into that number, but I think that's the true cost of a police officer as opposed to what we might see other times.
We've been talking lately about the police academy too, and the costs of that are substantially higher than what they are for most cities, because we pay our trainees, whereas most cities do not, and we also give them other benefits while they're training. So our academies are expensive. Some would say that that provides incentives for trainees to stay and be better trained by the Madison way, is what you hear. And so that doesn't always work out, though.
Yeah, and here's the number they got for the patrol officer, 78,000. So somewhere between 78,000 and 127,000, there's a lot of something.
Well, this is without benefits and
Yes.
supplies, whereas the other number includes that.
Yeah, again, that's how she got to 127. The police union contract impact on the budget. I tried to read through the police union contract a couple years ago. It was an amazing thing to read. But it's super complicated. And when you try to get people to explain it to you, even the police officers themselves can't explain it to you. There's just so many things everywhere. So I just tried to boil it down the best I could. Like, the city does these things and they retain those rights. And then the, this is important. The MPPOA contract does not indicate how many police officers must be hired, but does do like shift differential, overtime pay, longevity pay, Saturday, Sunday pay, educational incentive, MPPOA time, which is this code for like special projects that they want to do. The K9 amount of patrol gets all kinds of special compensation and allowances. 15 minutes of overtime every day. To report to work early, to be briefed, to do their jobs. And then there's also additional money for all of these things. There's also like reimbursement for equipment and tuition. All the insurance stuff is in there. It's pretty extensive. This was me boiling it down so people didn't have to try to read the document, but it is amazing. And the thing is they always approve that at a different time than what they approve the budget. So when they are negotiating that contract, it's going to have an impact on the next year's budget. But often we're told, as alders, we were always told, well, you can't interfere with that union contracting process. That's for the HR department and those guys to work out. And then you just kind of have to live with what the result of it is.
The new agreement for MPPOA is going to be at Finance Committee also on this coming Wednesday, and approved prior to our getting to the budget. So Brenda's right; it has a huge impact on the budget, but we don't really talk about it. Right. This new agreement would go through the end of 2025, which is kind of unusual that they agreed to that many years. And
I'm usually someone who likes unions and likes the ability, but the police department has so much special spending authority within their union contracts that is not considered the same as all the rest of the union contracts when they get approved.
I saw Tyson had his hand up.
No, I'll just wait till they're done. I can wait.
All right. Here's the different units that they have, like detectives and sergeants and lieutenants and all kinds of folks. And again, this is mostly just to show that this is what those people not on patrol are doing, essentially, right? this department is where, you know, a lot of the things that they do for PR is located in. And a reminder, we only have 6 mental health officers. And so they can't possibly cover the city.
There's one in each district of the 6 districts. Yeah.
And yeah, they don't work all 3 shifts. They don't work weekends. You know, they don't work when mental health issues are most needed. This was just to try to show how much of each of the units cost. To be like, okay, if we want to cut mounted patrol, what would it be? $180,000. If we want to cut the gang unit, $360,000. There are a lot of things though that are on the MPPOA team, and they don't have MPPOA time, and they don't have officers assigned to them. It's just something they also do in addition to whatever else they're doing. And so this is a list of some of those things. And then, my favorite, the vacation watch requests.
You should explain that, Brenda, because it really is pretty outrageous.
Did you guys know we lived in Mayberry? If you want, you can go on the police department website and you can request they come and drive by your house while you're on vacation.
Are you serious?
I am
Yep.
dead serious.
Wait, what are they called?
It's the vacation watch request.
Shut.
Can you go in each district?
We
and
have
go
a
on the website.
vacation watch request budget item.
It's not
Are
a
you-
budget item. That's
It's
the
not a
thing.
budget
That's why
item.
they do this
Yeah.
crap.
Oh,
They're like, we're so busy. We're so busy. Oh yeah, but we'll come by and drive by your house when you're on vacation.
And
It's
do what?
make white people feel safe.
Yeah. Fire
I
off a
don't
round.
know. I honestly don't know. I mean, it is curious.
the last 2 times I called the non-emergency police number was for concern of too much police presence, and they didn't know what to do. I'm like, why are they going? Is there something going on? Why are you going down my block like every couple hours? And they were like, well, I don't think there's something going on, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're just patrolling. I'm like, well, that's really weird and makes me feel unnerved. And I know a lot of other neighbors feel unnerved. Can you if there's not things going on, be when we're outside, or if I'm outside smoking a cigarette, I don't want to have to worry about a police officer driving by and policing me every 2 hours. They had no idea what to say or how to respond to it. Can we have an opposite request item, don't go down my street item?
Right. Have to start our own, please enter your information here if there's too much patrol. Michelle, you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I said it in the chat too, but I'm curious, as you're talking about the mental health officers, if there's one for each department or for each location, how does that compare to the staffing with the fire department with the care staff? How many do they have? Do you guys know?
They
It's
have
probably the same.
I was gonna say they have 2 units right now.
They now have
It's-
3, a third one getting going.
So there's 3 care staff,
No, that would be 6 people. They have
6 people.
2. They have 3 pairs. It's a fire department EMT paired with a journey mental health worker.
Okay.
And so there are 6 staff people for cares, and there are 6 mental health officers. But MPD also has journey mental health workers that are sometimes paired with their mental health workers who are not MPD employees. So I would say that the MPD health mental health component might be slightly larger. I don't know how that will change as CARES continues to expand, hopefully.
Thank you.
You know, Brenda mentioned, you know, that it's mental health workers. CARES 2 mostly work during the day. CARES has shifted a little bit to include some evening hours, but only Monday through Friday. And if you look at heat maps of when mental health calls have come in as a function of time of day, it really is during the day. And that's how they've convinced themselves that they need to have CARES the most during the day. But my theory is that lots of other mental health related calls come in the evenings and at night, but they're mixed in with other calls and issues, and they don't get coded as mental health calls. And so their heat maps may not be reflecting what's really going on. You know, there are all sorts of things related to, you know, what goes on at night with folks.
Well, if I know that the CARES team's not available, I'm not gonna call.
Yeah.
Right, like, oh, you know, like, I just don't call during those hours. Cause I don't want them to send a police officer, cause that's what they do, and that's not what's needed. The next section here is just on the civilian positions. And, one of the things that really is, been irritating me here is the records department. If you've done an open records request recently, it'll say, when you get the thing, we can't respond to you for, 6 to 8 weeks. Unless you are a landlord, you need a reference check done, or, like they prioritize some things, and then they also prioritize some media requests, but not all media requests, even though they're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to take all records requests in the order that they are received. So this is the one area where I would definitely advocate for increasing the police department budget, is in the records area. And generally speaking, the civilian folks, I do think, are working pretty hard. I'm surprised we still have report typists. With technology and all the advances we've made, but there are still some officers that have their reports typed. And they do spend a lot of time doing like background checks.
Tyson, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question about like junk science. So I know that there's a lot of junk science that's used by police departments from what I understand. And I'm wondering how that looks like in the budget, and like what junk science that we're still funding and maybe we could get rid of. For example, polygraph tests. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know. Like, I'm just curious on like what the police use, if they use any junk science in any of their investigations, or if that's like more of the DA. Like, I don't quite know. I just know that there's a lot of junk science in the criminal justice system, and I'm assuming the police budget reflects that too. And what that is in our budget, and like what we could work on and advocating against any junk science that might be used, and if we're allocating any funds towards it.
I'm not aware of anything like that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I haven't seen it in the budget, but as Brenda said, there are lots of things that we don't really see the details on. I wouldn't think that they would use lie detectors, but there I know there are other things like that you're referring to, Tyson.
Well, I think that's what's so frustrating, is to have like, $88 million and they fit it on 5 pages of a budget, and you're missing all of the detail, and they just don't provide that level of detail for us. And then trying to get that information out of them is really difficult. I think we'd have to specifically say, how much money do you spend on this particular type of thing? Like how much you spend on polygraphs, how much you spend on this? And oftentimes they're going to come back and they're going to say, well, we can't tell you how much time an individual police officer spends on that. Which, if in the nonprofit that I work in, and if I can't tell you how much time my staff spends on one program versus another program, I'm not going to get the funding. But for the police department, they seem to be able to do that and not have to break down their time about the various functions and the various activities that they're doing. So yeah, we've never asked that question. Doesn't mean we can't ask that question, and maybe we should start making a list of the questions we should be asking as well. If not for this year, for next year. All right, so that's civilian. We're almost done, I believe. Oh, this was the monetary award for police involved shootings. Luckily, there haven't been more. But it was a lot of money we paid out. Our insurance company paid out. And then we have to update that section. This was, what if we didn't have detectives? What if we didn't have traffic specialists? Again, this was us trying to figure out how much money was in each of these areas. And then this is just the public listening sessions and final thoughts. So that's the end of the report. I'll stop sharing there for a minute and I guess ask if there's questions. Patrick, did I miss anything? Is there anything else that you think? I mean, this is definitely work in progress.
I think you did a great job of going over it, and I'm sure it's a little bit overwhelming, but there's really, I think that I, as Brenda has mentioned, I encourage you to take a look at it on your own because there's a lot more buried in there.
And if you have questions, write them down and send them to us. Because if we were to go look at the police department budget now, you would be probably really surprised about the small amount of information that you get.
So can you put a little thing with arrow up to the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara. I'm here.
Yes, thanks very much for the presentation. I'm sorry I joined a little late. Did you mention how what the total budget is and what percentage that is of the overall city budget? And I guess I have some general kind of questions like what happened with the controls that people wanted to put on, like use of tear gas and so on? What happened with that particular ordinance compromise? They settled for a different statement that just said the police monitor should look into use of tear gas after it's already happened, rather than having a vote up or down on whether to ban tear gas and related materials used by the police department.
Sorry now. Oh yeah, we did show the figures at the beginning about the percentages of the budget that are dedicated to fire, police, public safety. There we go. Brenda's got them up again.
Thank you.
23%, approximately 23%, right?
Okay, thank you. So how much money is that?
That's 80.
This
80.
is 83 million because it's the
Okay,
tax dollars that we put into it, but the total budget is 88 million.
okay, thank you.
And then if you want to see the other part that I think is in here that you're probably looking for is like, here's the police department budget compared to like building inspection and community development. So you can see the various departments are here, and obviously the police department's the largest.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then I can take a stab at explaining what happened with tear gas. You know, the original ordinance change that was put in by Alder Bennett was not going to pass.
Wow.
And I think that there were quite a few of us that felt like we were hoping that another version of that could be proposed, and none of what was proposed happened until kind of the last minute. Some of it even on the floor. So a lot of us were in the dark about what was happening with this. And in the end, the morning of that council meeting, Alder Bennett put in another substitute that required that this study be done by the independent monitor. And most of us we didn't know about that until the day of the council meeting. So, it was messy. It was Alder Bennett's legislation. And I think a fair number of alders kind of deferred to her because she's the one that was carrying this. And in the end, what passed as you know, doesn't change anything about the use of tear gas, but it at least gets the eyes of the independent monitor on it. Would that probably have happened anyway, now that we have a COB and an IM? I would hope so. But this at least demands that this study. It's a small step forward. I don't think that the way the proposed ordinance change was submitted and how it evolved was probably a best case scenario. So, it's difficult to do things on the floor at council that don't cause problems. And I think we all decided, well, not all, 14 of us decided we'll take this rather than nothing.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate your perspective here, certainly, Patrick, but it seems to me, if I had, God forbid I'm on the city council, I don't have the patience that you do or the skills that you do. But if I was on the city council and that was my resolution, I would not have amended it. I would have just said, well, let them vote for tear gas. Let them vote that up or down and see where we are. And that would give us a good indication of where the city council was. So
I think I know where the city council is.
but
I think that there are plenty of alders who would have voted for tear gas.
I'm sure there are. So I think they should be on record voting for tear gas.
I think most would gladly do it.
Well, then I think they should have had to make some public stance on that, rather than able to sort of wiggle and make a more general liberal sort of statement, if you'll excuse the term liberal loosely.
I can believe that this could come up again, but I'll bet it doesn't come up until after elections.
Yes, that would be a good bet. Thank you. Thank you for your information.
Yeah, Tyson, go ahead.
Actually, Patrick, thanks for that explanation, Patrick. I was literally gonna ask, do you see this coming up again, or do you hear any rumblings of it? And you already answered my question, so thanks.
I think a better strategy could be employed next time.
All right.
Well, I have a question. This whole militarization and 1033 acquisitions that just kind of happened in the background. I mean, what would it take to bring this process out in more transparent? So I mean, I understand that it's not in the budget, but part of your mission is to review their annual plans and their so somehow it seems like there's some way that something could happen to force them to at least have to report it publicly when it happens.
Yeah,
So
right now it's only
on.
those. Right now it's only those expensive items, but they gladly will tell you what they get because they're very proud of it, that they get it for free. And it really is things like, it could be 20 chairs, it could be all sorts of different things. And they really do focus, I think now, because eyes have been on this, on getting things, it could be bathroom supplies. I don't know. I mean, it's really kind of innocuous stuff mostly. They don't get armaments generally anymore. And
but they could.
But they could, yeah.
And they have in the past.
In the past they have,
yeah.
And there, but it's an interesting point. PSRC could ask annually, let's see it, or we could pass an ordinance that says they need to report everything they got every year. It wouldn't be a bad thing, that's for sure.
That would be a good idea.
Michelle?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. I guess I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around this because I'm trying to understand what the committee purpose is and that this, I guess, subcommittee purpose is. Because if you all are meeting and reviewing this stuff, but you don't have really the ability to do anything about it, I feel like, don't you just feel like you're just banging your head against the wall constantly? I mean, like, how is there any way actually put any of this into action, or is it just like somebody's got to do something trying to extract information? Like, I guess I'm sort of like trying to understand how these committees are effective. I'm not saying that insulting at all, because obviously you guys are doing like a ton of work on this. I'm just trying to understand how the committee is effective and can be more effective, and how maybe people can support that.
I'll give the politic answer and then Brenda can give the real answer.
I'm here for both of them, Patrick. So.
You know, there are dozens of committees that have no real power. All they can do is make recommendations to council, and council can ignore them, accept them, work with them, whatever. And PSRC traditionally over the years has really not put forward any independent recommendations, only reacting to ordinance changes that are sent to us by council, and hasn't really done any proactive work. And that describes a lot of committees, but certainly there are committees who dig in and do try to make independent observations and recommendations. And I think we've come closer to doing that. With regard to the police budget, 2 years ago, we put forward a set of concerns. I can't remember what we called them about the police budget, and we sent it to all alders. And it's like, we think you need to think about these things, but we didn't actually say you should do this. It's our recommendation. Will that happen this year? I don't know, probably not, but we might talk about it. So we're getting closer. And there aren't very many committees that can actually do stuff. It's always referring, recommending to council, but there are some committees who can do things. And Brenda will probably address why we're in this situation.
Yeah, pull up your chair. Grandma's got a story. Back in 1998, when I started with Progressive Dane, one of the first things on our agenda was, let's make the Public Safety Review Committee actually be effective. Like, that was one of the very first things that I recall working on a bajillion years ago. And at that point, there was an alder that was the chair of the committee. It was Tim Brewer, who was just basically there to do whatever the police wanted, right? And to make sure the committee did nothing. And we fought really hard, and we passed an ordinance, said alders can't chair committees, and we did all these things, and we finally got somebody from Progressive Dane to chair that committee. But they spent so much of their time just trying to get things on an agenda. This has been a battle since 1998, when I remember, to even be able to get things onto an agenda, to get the police department to answer questions, to get the police department to even have their personnel show up, to all of the things. It's been super, super frustrating. I don't know if anybody remembers Richard Marie Commander, but that was one of our Progressive Dane folks that was on that committee, and they tried and they tried and they tried, and finally they moved out of town, and so we ended up it just started giving up again, because it was just so hard. And part of what I've been trying to do by getting, the mayor was so mad at me that I wanted to be on this committee. She did not want me to be on this committee. She tried to put me on all kinds of other committees. I kept saying, no, I want to be on this committee. And I was the chair for a couple of years, but it is really super hard to be able to get the bureaucracy that is the police department to do anything that is supportive of this committee. And so it's I was the chair, so I just made Emily do some things, but now I'm not the chair anymore. And I think we've gone back to sort of, I pushed really hard for a lot of things that nobody saw in the background, but then I would get an email from the mayor's offices after every meeting with everybody complaining about me, saying I shouldn't have done that. I didn't have the authority to do that. Why was I able to do these things? But I wasn't doing anything besides chairing the committee with the consent of the committee. I'd say, is there a motion to put this on the next agenda, right? And that's what committees are supposed to do, but I would get all the blowback from it. So it's just really super frustrating, because there's just this bureaucracy that defends the police department so harshly. This report was really our attempt to expose to some extent the police department, because you can't find all of this information. And I do know, and the reason why I don't mind putting the time into it is we sent this out, and one of the newer alders sent me an email and said, "Oh my God, that is the best report. I understand the police department more than I ever have." Right. And this is somebody who'd been paying attention as long as I have been. And so the fact that they thought it was useful made me feel like, okay, that's what Matthew and I kind of had in our minds when we said, let's do this, because we thought we need to put the information out there. Because if you go look at the police department budget, you're going to see 8 pages, and you're going to see what it costs for police patrol and police support. And that's the only 2 categories you're going to see. You're not going to see all of this information. You're not going to see it in context. You're not going to see how it's changed over the years. You're not going to see how many police officers got added every year for the last X number of years. And so I think this report provides that context, because we have so many alders who turn over every single year, every year now, not every other year when the elections, but people resign all the time. And so we have new alders coming in, and this is one way where we can at least get the alders up to speed, because I feel like that is where the police department has been excellent at taking advantage of new alders. You get elected, you hear all your constituents complaining about something, you're going to go fight for them so you can get reelected. And I think this like sheds light on what's really going on in the police department budget to the best of our ability. But you're right. I mean, like, why believe me, I ask myself this all the time.
No,
Why
I
am
give you
wasting
guys
my
a lot of
time?
credit for hanging in there and doing it, because it just feels like kind of thankless work. But exactly what you were just saying, for anybody that is coming in new and doesn't know, I mean, and even just for people in general, living here, I just feel like that should be more transparent. It also gives it also sort of like, that whole narrative about like people that want to like defund police. It's like, do you realize that we don't just get to vote yes or no on that? Like, it's not that simple. You actually really don't get to vote on very many things that have to do with the police department. It's really tightly locked up. No pun intended. But it's like there is no way really to like pull out those individual things and be like, yeah, we don't like that, because you don't have that authority to do that. So like this fear that like anybody who's elected can just have like the power to be like, I want to bring this to the table and like chop this all off. You don't have the ability to do that. And I think that's really important to point out to folks too.
That's a good
When I
point.
said when I was on the council, I was on the council from 2001 to 2009. And I said, how much does reading with a cop cost? I'm like, oh, well, we can't tell you that. I'm like, well, why do you do reading with a cop? Is this really like, is this our priority? If we're worried about safety and we're worried about crime, do we need to have reading with a cop? Right? Like, what is the point of that? But no one could ever tell me what it costs to do reading with a cop. And so when we started doing this, I really wanted to get to what does it cost to do reading with a cop? How can alders ask those questions? How much does it cost for our vacation watch program? How much does it cost for, like, there's a bunch of other things in there that are I always pick on reading with a cop because I picked on it already and they've already been mad at me about it. So I just stick with that one. But there's a whole bunch of other things I want to say. How much does this thing cost? Right. And they can't tell us. So this was our attempt to like get as much information to try to drill down to figure it out. But I still couldn't tell you, what does it cost for reading with a cop? How much time do they spend on this vacation thing? The vacation watch thing? I don't know. And
MPPOA time.
MPPOA time, yeah. And to me,
well, and interestingly enough, I personally had to have a call to the police department. It was about something really stupid and person that was being stalkerish. And the person that the officer that I was working with, she's like, oh, I'll make sure that I come down your street once a day and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what the hell is that going to do? She was texting me. What, are you going to come look at my phone? Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. She offered to like come down my street. I'm like, do you just have nothing better to do than come down my street during the day? She actually brought that up to me. She said, we do that for people all the time who are worried about things, or they're calling, or they're going on vacation, or they're, they call us and they're concerned about suspicious things. I'm just like, really? It surprised me that she was so open about the fact that they waste so much money doing that.
Yeah.
But it makes people feel safer. So
one more thing about PSRC is that, you know, when I was elected in 2019, I got appointed to PSRC, and you know, I talked to some folks about it beforehand and was warned it wasn't the most active of committees. And for that first year, maybe, I mean, it was, you know, really incredibly irrelevant, and nobody, and I think that's probably what it's been like since Brenda was alder. And thankfully Mary Anglem was on it, and we sometimes plotted together about how to have more relevant discussions and agenda items. And yeah, it was great to work with Mary on that. And eventually then things started changing, and there have been a kind of interesting combination of people on PSRC, and I think that's okay. We have lively discussions now, and fortunately Brenda's leadership, I think, set a great example for some of the committee members, and that there is a chance for it to be more relevant. It's certainly already more relevant than it used to be, and part of that is Alder's fault too. I mean, it's the amount of power you have is largely a function of how much the alders advocate for the committee. So that's been problematic too.
Well, and when I was the chair, I routinely would look at the council agenda and say, this is related to the police budget. Why wasn't it referred to us? And then I would email the alders and say, why isn't this referred to us? And then the alders would refer it. And so I was really keeping track of things that were coming through me, like refer this to PSRC, refer it. I stopped doing that, and I realized I think there's things going through again that I probably should be watching for and making sure that they get referred.
In my defense, I don't think there are.
Oh.
You trained me.
Yeah, I thought I saw like 2 things, but they were like, I didn't really care that much about them, so I just sort of stopped watching. But yeah, I think Tyson's had his hand up for a really long time.
Yeah, so okay, like going into basically what you guys are talking about like we're hearing what you can't do, what can you do? Like not necessarily as a committee, but as alders, and why can't alders just require a goddamn line item budget? Like like why can't alders just require that and put that in legislation saying like, show me your budget, make sure it's more transparent. You know, it needs to be more than just these buckets. Like it needs to be more granular or, you know, more in depth. Are alders able to do that? And if not, why not? And if so, why hasn't that been done yet?
I mean, I'll take a stab at that, but I mean, you're really talking about every department. It's very mysterious. I think the police department is extra mysterious because it's, number one, it's gigantic, and number two, they don't really want to necessarily list everything they're doing. But the budgets for every department are you know, quite difficult to understand, and they don't list out a lot of what they're doing. And I think that it's the entire budget process, and it's partially a result of, you know, the calendar, the way that it happens is it's effectively without any public engagement. I mean, sure, we engage over the course of the year, and the mayor does too, but it's you know, kind of behind a curtain where all these things have happened. And I think if we were to have real participatory budgeting and things like that, we could get closer to that. But I don't know, it's the entire system, but yeah, the police are one of the worst offenders. So whether we could, you know, council could say we now want all departments to do this. I think it would take a huge culture shift. Doesn't mean we can't try, because there is lip service given to participatory budgeting, and that we're going to move in that direction. We'll see.
Well, you know, when I compare it to like community services budget, you can look in their budget and be like, this is how much we spend on childcare. This is how much we spend on senior services. This is how much we spend on youth services. This is how much we spend on housing. This is how much we spend on homelessness. When you look at the police department budget, you can't tell how much time do they spend in any of those categories. It's just, they're just held to a completely different standard. You know, for for community services, you know, part of it's because there's a lot of it's federal pass-through money, but they, you know, my time sheets that I have to turn in have to have all of this detailed information about where I spent my time because we're funded by the city of Madison, but the police department doesn't have to do any of that. And mostly because nobody ever required them to. So it's a huge amount of data too. That is true because they have such a huge department, but I don't feel like it's systemic from a long time ago, right? It's like, it's another one of those long going systemic things about how different services have been treated over the years. And, you know, if you ask the streets department, how much brush did you pick up? How much this did you do? How much that did you do? You get an answer, right? They know. Why can't the police department tell us what impact they had? And we've never really held them to any measurable standards. And if we do start holding them to a measurable standard, they change it 3 years later to a different standard, so we can never compare it to what they did in the past. And I'm old and cynical and should shut up now.
That was actually my question, Brenda. I was going to ask if the other, you know, the data points that you were, you know, with the bars going across, and no one goes all the way across. Like, is there like accountability to those departments of having to prove that they are necessary, effective? You know, like they have to have like data that they're actually doing something that is like makes sense for the city to spend money on, because I feel like most of those things do have to prove that like they actually did something, because they're not going to fund it otherwise. So it's sort of like, what? Why? I mean, I know the why, but you know what I'm saying.
Those other departments don't really list the fine details in their budget either. Yes, it might say this is how much money is going to trash collection or homeless services or whatever, but the fine details are not in there. But if you ask, you can get them. And it's not the case with the police department. I think part of it is, you know, traditionally they haven't had to justify their funding, and culturally there's a huge swath of people that say, oh my God, we need more cops, you know, and they listen to that, and the narrative around that accentuates the problem, I think.
And part of it is just from the structure, even in the state, right? Like from the state laws that created, you know, the chief, and that created the, you know, structure that we're within. They really took a lot of power away from the council for political, like it was like a political thing, so that the council people couldn't influence the chief. So it was done, I think, for a good reason, but the results are, I think, are very unintended. And so now we're stuck in a system where the council just doesn't have a lot of control over the police department in a lot of ways. And there's been, you know, epic battles over there. Mostly, you know, Rebecca Kemble was awesome at fighting some of those battles for us as a community, but those are hard battles. And when you go up against those power positions, they retaliate. So
I mean, it's even been over the years extremely difficult to consider not funding some requests that MPD even has, and they'll, you know, the claim will be made that we don't have the authority to even do it. And, you know, it's a little clear that we do have some authority in that regard, but it's tough.
They're one of the few departments that has their own PR people. At least they were for the longest time. They're the only ones with PR people, right? And so they are right out there on message doing, like, they are, I mean, they're out there in the community whipping up support and doing all the stuff that every other department would get in trouble if they were to do it, right? But the police department can do those types of things.
Other departments now have PIOs for sure, lots of them.
Yeah. So yeah, it's starting to get the playing field is starting to be a little bit evened, but those are the little victories we can claim.
You gotta take it when you get them, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right, well, it's just about 8 o'clock. Does anyone else have anything, they'd like to say? Yeah, go ahead, Harry.
You guys for your time and certainly all the time you put on these committees. That's amazing. But what can we do? I guess the obvious question is, what can we do for the future? How could Progressive Dean and other people concerned about this issue make your committee more effective, make the city council more effective at having some reasonable controls, openness with the police department? Thanks.
That's an excellent question. You know, one thing that we talked about just very briefly in the report, and Brenda brought it up, was, you know, MPD's lack of strategic planning. And they actually are doing a long-term strategic plan right now. And they hired a big firm to facilitate this process and to help them. And they asked alders, some alders, they asked some people, who should we talk to? And I sent them a list of folks. Brenda tried, and we got nowhere. We don't even know who the community members are that are helping them with their strategic plan. So that was a great opportunity that didn't go anywhere so far. And so I'm thinking, Harry, there might be other opportunities like that, where we can get community members to give feedback to MPD. You know, every once in a while they'll do surveys, but the surveys are, you know, kind of slanted, and maybe we could get community members involved in engagement with MPD somehow. I don't know. I'm really talking off the top of my head. That's something that PSRC could do, would be to, you know, figure out how to make that happen. Certainly talking to alders is helpful, standard stuff.
I was just gonna say, I actually would, and this sounds crazy, but I would really appreciate it if people would come to the PSRC meetings with the issues that are bugging you and say, these are the things we want you guys to be talking about. Why aren't you doing it? Right? Like, I want people to be mad at us and tell us what we're supposed to be doing, because then we're like, well, the public said, right? And then we can put pressure on others to be able to do it. But when we're saying, this is what I'm hearing, they're like, oh, Brenda, you're just like in this little piece of the community and you're not hearing from the rest of the community. That's not what we hear. We hear different things, you know, and it would really be super helpful if people would be coming, even if they just said 2 minutes worth of stuff in the beginning of a meeting every other month, you know, and it was just a different group of people being like, hey, we want you to do this. Hey, we want you to do this. Hey, we want you to do this. Sometimes they're really rude to us when they come, and it would be nice if they would stop being so vitriolic. But otherwise, I think that hearing from people and saying, this is what we heard from the public, people took time out of their day to come and talk to us about this thing that was important to them. We need to look into it, because otherwise I keep trying to put things on the agenda and I feel like I'm being shut down again, because the items that I put on the agenda aren't getting actually onto the agenda. Oh yeah, we'll put that on a future agenda, and then it sits on a list at the bottom of the agenda and doesn't actually get back on there. Yeah.
Brenda brings up a good point. We have a couple of people who come to most of the meetings, and oftentimes they'll sign up to make just general public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and essentially they'll rail against some of us and just say the nastiest stuff, and that we're killing people, the cops, you know, that we're destroying the cops, and what the hell are we doing? And it's kind of disheartening. And it would be nice to have some reasonable folks show up and say, you know, not necessarily, you know, people who thinks all cops should be fired or something, but it's like, we need to look into understanding how our money's being spent. We need to understand particular issues. It would be really great to hear some of those comments.
Yeah, what things did they buy from the 1033 program this year? What,
Yeah,
you know, like,
yeah.
you know, one of the things we tried to do is get like, how much tear gas did you buy this year? You know, or things like that, right? Like if people would show up and just ask those questions, we could be like, yes, we want to find out, hey, can you know, so and
One
so
of the
who's sitting here right
meetings-
now, bring it to our next meeting, right? And so like some of those things, I think we just need to like sort of like use the public to like make them do the things that even us as committee members can't get them to do.
They're
Brenda, one of the meetings.
It's
Um,
usually the second Wednesday
Oh.
of the month.
At 5 o'clock.